today's video, we could do my sinking funds. I have been putting off setting up my sinking funds for quite a while now because I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and just kind of sitting down to start sinking funds from scratch felt very overwhelming. However, it's time. I have been going over budget with my monthly budget because I've been using my monthly budget to pay for things that should really be coming out of sinking funds. So it's time to set this up. I sat down and did a little bit of brainstorming, and I decided on 7 categories for sinking funds. In the past, I've had way more than that. I've gone way more in depth into how much I was going to save for every single category, and I had a specific goal in mind for every single category. Budgeting is tough work, man, and I just don't have the brain power right now to figure all of that up. So instead, I'm just going to jot down a handful of categories that I would like to save money for, and we're just going to start saving, and I can always add more later or change things up later, but for now, just getting started is daunting, so I'm going to push through and do it. If you're not familiar with sinking funds, I think everybody does them a little bit differently. For me, sinking funds are short-term savings for things that I know are going to come up pretty much within the year. I have money that I am saving actively for the future for things like our emergency fund. That's a big, overarching goal. I have got money that we're putting aside to save for a down payment on a house. That's a long-term goal. For sinking funds, though, these are more short-term things. So here are the categories I decided on. I'm going to let you know what they are. I'm going to write them out, and then we're going to pull some cash out and talk about what we're going to put into each fund. In my January budget, I have set aside $1,000 to put into sinking funds. I'm only going to allocate half of that today because I've been doing so much overspending in my budget that I'm probably going to funnel $500 of those dollars back into the bank to cover some of that. So I'm going to pull $1,000 from my bank, which I've already actually done, but only $500 I'm going to set aside for sinking funds, I think. If I get to the end of the month and it turns out I don't need those $500 that I've kind of set aside to put back into my account, then I can stuff those here into my sinking funds later. But like I said, I've been doing a lot of spending. For example, I took our son out for his birthday over the weekend. That would typically come out of one of these sinking funds that I'm going to talk through today. But because I didn't have it set up, I just took it out of our eating out money, which means that our eating out budget for the month has seriously dwindled. So if we end up going over budget in eating out, it will kind of help me offset it by putting some of the sinking fund money back to the bank. Does that make sense? I hope that it does. So here are the categories. And like I said, there has definitely been more in the past. I will probably add more in the future, but for right now, as of today, these are the funds that we're going to set up. Starting with camping, we have had a camping fund for as long as I can remember, with money set aside to pay for our annual campsite and also to help us fund our camping trips. We tend to spend a lot of time in the spring and summer at our camper. We haven't this last year spent as much time as usual because we're still adapting to our new life with me working full-time and us owning a business. So we haven't spent as much time, but I'm hoping next summer we'll be able to get back to it. So I want to make sure that we are setting aside money so that we can do that. All of these funds, by the way, are starting with 0. We did take everything that we had set aside in sinking funds and put it towards buying my son a car. We bought my son a 2011 Ford Fusion. He just turned 16. He's going to be getting his driver's license soon, so we did buy him a car. We took all of the money we had saved in a sinking fund for his car, plus some money from other funds to do like the license plate, the tax and insurance and all of that. So our sinking funds are starting from zero. The little bit of money that we had left over after we did all that, we just kind of put back into the bank, and we're starting fresh with sinking funds for 2024. So camping is the first fund. Next is celebrations. So if we want to go out to celebrate our anniversary or birthdays, that money will come from our celebration sinking fund. Next up is car. So this is for car registration, which we have quite a few cars now that we have to register each year. My husband has a truck, I've got my car, and then we've got Austin's car. So that bill right in January at the start of the year is pretty hefty. So we want to be saving for that, and also any car maintenance that comes up. If we need oil changes, that'll come out of here. So it's just one overarching car fund. Next up is fun. So I thought about doing a vacation fund, but with us running the business, we can't exactly go on vacation right now. We're not in a position to drop everything and go away for a week. So it's not likely that we will take vacations. If we do have time from work, we will likely just go camping at our camper. So instead, I decided to have a fun category so that if we do manage to go away for a weekend, or if we want to go out and do something fun as a family, we have money to do that. So rather than a vacation fund, I just made a fun fund. And in the future, if we can't take vacation time and go away, we can use that fund for that as well. So that's fun. All of these are starting with zero, by the way. Next up is home. So much like with our overarching car fund, this is our overarching home fund. It's to pay for our homeowner's insurance, which we pay for annually, and it's also for any home projects, that sort of thing. We have our household items that we pay for monthly that comes out of our grocery budget in our monthly budget, but this is going to be for more like home projects, home maintenance. If we have to fix the furnace, it'll come out of here. So that is that. It's a pretty big fund, very important for us to have. So I wanted to make sure to include it. Next up is miscellaneous. We're just going to have a miscellaneous fund for anything else that comes up. This is sort of like another buffer situation. We have a miscellaneous category in our monthly budget. We have our emergency fund. Now we have a miscellaneous fund in our sinking funds just for anything else that comes up. Back when I was doing sinking funds before, I had like an Austin fund. So if he wanted to go to a school dance, or if he needed new school clothes or whatever, that would come out of Austin's fund. We no longer have that. Instead, we just have a miscellaneous fund. That's likely what I will use for all of those other like miscellaneous things that we can't cash flow in our monthly budget. I'm hoping to cash flow a lot of those things this year, but if not, we'll have this miscellaneous fund to fall back on. And lastly, we have pet. So we now have 2 cats and a dog. We're going to the vet constantly with our puppy. So we want to make sure that we are going to have money set aside. This will not be for like pet food or that pet treats, that sort of thing. That's all included in our monthly budget. This will be more for like vet visits or large expenses that come up that are pet related. So those are my funds. It's a start, right? This does not cover everything. There are other things that are going to come up throughout the year that I'll think, wow, I wish I had a sinking fund for that. And the beauty of personal finance is it's personal. My budget doesn't have to look like your budget. And I can change my mind, so I can always add more funds later. So those are the 7 funds I'm starting with. I feel less overwhelmed now. I sat down on multiple occasions to try to figure out the sinking funds, and every time I had like 25 categories, and it was just so daunting to think of having to fill all of those categories. So starting with 7 feels really good. So let's talk about what we're gonna put into these funds, and let me grab some cash. All right, so I pulled in my cash. This is $500. Like I said, I did pull $1,000 total, but I'm gonna slip 500 of it back in the bank, I think. And I can always take it back out later if we don't need it for our January budget. So for right now, we're gonna stuff $500. And in the past, I've had fancy binders that have had like a different envelope for each category. And again, I was so daunted by starting this all up again. I didn't want to make it super complicated. So instead, I'm going to keep all the cash in just one envelope. I have this envelope here. This is going to go into my safe. I will have the breakdown here on paper, so I'll know how much I have set aside for each fund, and I'm just going to keep the cash all together. So really quickly, I want to count this up and make sure it's $500. 20, 40, 60, 80, 1, 20, 40, 60, 82, 20, 40, 60, 83, 20, 40, 60, 84, 20, 40, 60, 85. So $500. I'm gonna just slip this right here into my envelope. I'll get it put into the safe for safekeeping, and that'll be it. There's no need for me to make this super complicated. I may in the future, but for now, this is as fancy as I'm gonna get. So we have $500 set aside for sinking funds. Where are we gonna allocate those funds? So pretty simple. I'm gonna keep it real simple. So $500 isn't gonna go super far here, but we're gonna make it work. It's a great, great start. If you can set aside $10 for sinking funds, then you're doing a great job. Whether it's $10 or, $1,000 or $10,000, everybody starts somewhere, and this is where I'm starting. So we're gonna put $100 into camping. Seems like a good solid start. For celebrations, we're also gonna do 100. I don't have anything major coming up for either of these categories that I'm gonna need to pull from. For celebrations, I might pull some money out of here for like a little Valentine's Day gift for each of my boys, but that's something I can probably cash flow, honestly. So maybe we'll just keep on saving up until we get to the end of March, which is my husband and I, our anniversary. So we'll see about that. For car, we're also gonna do 100. A good solid start. For fun, we're gonna add $40. For miscellaneous, for home. Let's not skip home. That's gonna get $100. For miscellaneous, we're gonna do $20. And for pet, we're gonna do 40. So let me just add that up really quick and make sure that that does add up to 500 and I didn't mess it up. Yes, it does indeed add up to 500. So that's gonna be our total down here. And that's a good solid start. Maybe it doesn't make for a super interesting video, just lumping it all together and throwing it into an envelope rather than having separate envelopes for everything. I'm sure it would make a much more entertaining video if I set up a binder and did all of that and had little savings challenges that everybody does. I really love that. It makes it fun, but right now the idea of sitting down and doing all that just overwhelms me. So I wanted to just get it down on paper, get it started, and at least now throughout the rest of January, if something comes up that I would typically take the money out of sinking funds for, I have the money there to do it, and I don't have to keep draining my monthly budget. So yeah, for totals, we started the month with 0, we added 500. I will come back at the end of the month and we'll talk about if we did any spending from our sinking funds. So I'll do an update towards the end of the month. but I'm glad I finally sat down and did this. I feel a lot better. I've been meaning to do it since the year started, so I'm only a couple of weeks behind, I guess, but feeling less overwhelmed now, which is good. That's it, guys. That's my sinking funds for January. Do you have sinking funds? Do you save for things that you know are coming up throughout the year? Let me know what your categories are. I would love to hear from you. And I will see you guys real soon. Bye.